Chancy in Fargo, you are on Vikings Vent Line.
Yes, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, bud.
Hopefully I got better reception today. Here's my thing. I called last year after they lost to the Bears to get into the playoffs. And what I said at that point is, where is the accountability? Whose scalp is on the line for this? And last year I joked about it. Okay, it's not Mike Zimmer. Nobody's willing to pull the plug. It's not Rick Spielman. He's had some good draft picks. It's not Kirk Cousins, right? Who can we get that's better? He's better than Case Keenum, and he's got that big contract. What are we going to do? Yeah, let's get rid of Mike Remmers. That'll fix it, right? We got rid of Mike Remmers. So now we're set. And now we're going to do the same thing, right? Ooh, we had that good game in New Orleans. Whose fault is it? What can we do? You know what we'll do? We'll get rid of Xavier Rhodes. Yeah, he's a bust. He's costing us a lot of money. Get rid of Xavier Rhodes. That's it. And we'll roll back the same troop next year, and it'll be all different, right? We got Mike Zimmer, got Rick Spielman and Kirk Cousins, and damn it, we just need to play perfectly. That offensive line, they're going to block perfectly. It's BS every year. What team is stacked across the field? Yes, the offensive line is not efficient. Every other game, they are awful. But we have a quarterback that is from the 1990s when you used to be Troy Aikman and you used to stand back there and just throw. Like you said,
yeah.
The new age is Deshaun Jackson. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Lamar Jackson. Aaron Rodgers. Those quarterbacks don't work anymore. We're not going to be perfect across the field. So I want to challenge you, Mackey and Judd, right now. I'm not saying what you think is going to happen. I'm going to say the same thing I said last year. What would you do if you were the Wilfs to fix this? Not what you think they will do. What would you do? Is it Spielman gone? Is it Zimmer gone? Is it Cousins gone? Because just keeping on rolling this same product out is going to produce the same result. Maybe you win one playoff game. Maybe you miss the playoffs. But they will not go to the Super Bowl with this model. I'm convinced of it. I don't know that there needs to be accountability, and nobody is ever willing to step up and make a tough call. They're always willing to, the offensive line, Spielman's had a few good draft picks. Hey, that defensive game plan Zimmer put together against the Saints was good. So nobody can ever take the blame, right? Nobody can ever step up and say whose fault it was and what's going to happen. What would you two do if you were in the position of power? You're the owner of the Vikings. What would you do to fix this mess and get them over the hump?
So Chancy, hang on the line, because this is a great call. You always bring passion and fire, and I'll answer your question. Let's go back and forth. I'll answer your question first.
Okay.
Ideally, I am not saying that this loss is Kirk Cousins' fault. I want to start by saying that this was not Kirk Cousins' fault. I would like a more mobile quarterback that can elude pressure and run around and keep plays alive like you see a third of the league right now. I mean, look at all the quarterbacks you're going to watch this weekend. Those teams have built-in advantages when they have quarterbacks like that who make less money because they can spend that extra money on different players that can help the entire team. And if Nick Bosa gets off the edge, the play isn't over. The play's not over when Kyler Murray is your quarterback, when Lamar Jackson's your quarterback, when Andrew Luck previously is your quarterback. So I would start my wish list would include a more mobile quarterback who can still make plays down the field, and Kirk Cousins throws a wonderful deep ball. And in a perfect world, I would like a more offensive-minded approach to the entire thing. The problem is, to your point, you don't solve anything by just firing people. I know it feels good if you're a fan and you're mad. Like, it feels good to say, hold someone accountable and fire Spielman's ass, right? But firing people doesn't solve the problem, or it doesn't provide solutions. I need to know, if I'm firing someone, who's my Kyle Shanahan? You know, who's my Bill Belichick, right? That's the problem. The Vikings have a lot of good. The Vikings have a good quarterback, a good coach, a good general manager, but they don't have a lot of great. And you can't win a Super Bowl without great.
But I think the ultimate answer to what you're saying, Chancy, and here's the problem, is if the Wilfs looked in the mirror and said what you just said, which is if we release Remmers or Rhodes, it doesn't save us. I think the issue is that the reality to, if you're going to answer your question correctly, absolutely, goes to, are we even doing this right? And that's not to be a good team. This can be a good team. This has personnel to be a good team. But if you're going to get to a Super Bowl team, the scary thing is, because you could be wrong and screw this up completely and become a 5-win team, is you would have to consider not making a change, not making 2 changes, but blowing it up. Because philosophically, there's a case to be made that the way the Vikings approach the construction of things in 2020 does not work. It doesn't work.
Can I respond to you guys here
Yes.
for a second?
Yes, please do.
All right. Here's my deal. Mike Zimmer or Rick Spielman, whoever it is that's making these calls, bothers me because what they do with personnel is they're never willing to pull the plug a step ahead, right? We pull it late, I get. You draft Mike Hughes, Xavier Rhodes should be cut ahead of time. Eric Wilson starts to pop. He's showing a little bit of something, right? Anthony Barr should not be re-signed. You have to look ahead of time. Stephen Weatherly's starting to show something. I can't even say the guy's name. Bibbenjo, whatever. He's starting to show something. You need to start cutting overpriced veterans before it is obvious that they are on the decline. Most good teams will start to move those young players up into a role of prominence, into a starting role, before you know they're popping, right? We see it as fans once they hit the field. They should see it on the practice field. They should say, you know what? Yeah, we don't need to pay a big money to Anthony Barr because I saw Eric Wilson, and he can deliver a little bit of something. And if you're going to put your money into certain positions, and we're going to have Kirk Cousins as the quarterback, I want the best offensive line in the NFL. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm willing to sacrifice an Anthony Barr trade-off for Eric Wilson in exchange for Pat Elflein is a piece of garbage. Okay? Pat Elflein can be cut tomorrow. There has to be somebody better in the practice squad than Pat Elflein. Pat Elflein can't even get a fingernail on some of these defensive tackles as they run by him. It is atrocious, okay? So if my trade-off is, well, I got to take one step back, Eric Wilson over Anthony Barr in exchange for somebody else besides Pat Elflein that can play guard, I'm willing to make that trade-off. And that's the personnel decisions, and they're hard to make, but Mike Zimmer, with his defensive-first, ultra-conservative philosophy, can never make them because he's got to have that defense. He's got to have his boys, and he can't make them. And this is an offensive league where we're sitting around putting big money into overpriced, older defensive players, and we're not ready to deliver on offense. It's an offensive league. This team didn't even break 100 dang yards. Okay?
Hey, Chancy. They did. They had 147, just so you know.
Garbage time, right? They punched them over in that
story of
when it was
the Kirk Cousins time has been that garbage time.
I mean, 147 yards. Okay, give him some credit there.
But anyway, that is why, and we've talked about this for months. That is why, if Anthony Barr played for the Patriots and Anthony Barr went to the Jets, and then Anthony Barr panicked because he said, "Oh my God, I'm about to sign with the New York Jets. What am I doing?" And he called Bill Belichick and said, "Bill, I want back." Bill would say, "No, we've moved on. That money has been moved." Yeah. And your offensive line point is a point that has been debated and discussed and has come up since the day that they did not adequately address it. And it's a great point. But I think, Chancy, your points go beyond that. I really think they go to sitting down and saying what's going to win a Super Bowl in 2020, and probably getting to the point where you say our current construction might get us a playoff win, and it did, and it might get you 2. But is it going to get you a championship? The answer, and this goes beyond the coach, the answer to the entire construction is Probably not.
And that's the hardest thing to confront, is when you're as good as the Vikings have been, and you're a regular playoff contender and a division contender, and you're a 10-win team, and you're a 12-win team sometimes, and you're never a 4-win team. You're never a 5-win team. Mike Zimmer's worst season as head coach of the Vikings is 7 wins. And when you have that solid of a base and the security of being good on a regular basis, it's hard to look in the mirror and ask, boy, I mean, can we be great? Can we win a Super Bowl? And if the answer is no, what do you do? I mean, do you give up good and maybe be terrible for a couple years in order to eventually be great with no guarantees? And those are the decisions that they're facing. One more, Chancy, 30 more seconds for you. This has been a great call. 30 more seconds to wrap.
What team, has more skill players than Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Dalvin Cook, Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, Everson Griffin, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, and cannot put it together? That's what I got. And if you have that many skill players, I dare you guys to look across the NFL and list off any team's top 5 skill players, right? And put them against the Vikings. Other than quarterback, of course, where we have Kirk Cousins, and say, who has the best skill players? And I bet you the Vikings come out on top 9 out of 10 times. And that's a problem when you can win no more than one playoff game. I love Score North. Thank you guys for taking my call and giving me all this time. Skol. Have a good night.
Right on, man. All right, that's
great call, Chancy. Thank you. But what is the thing that we hear among teams that are trying to build something consistently? Success starts up front with lines, your lines,
yes,
your line. And as flawed as Childress was as a coach at times, Phil, he was actually a pretty solid personnel guy. And he got here. And what's one of the first things he did? They gave free agent contracts to a few players, but one was Steve Hutchinson, a left guard, to establish that. So now it's Hutchinson, McKinney back then, and we can joke all we want about Bryant, but Bryant was a good player. Matt Burke at center, they built that line. And that's the one thing with Rick, is it's always like he's trying to get around having to pay a lot for his line. And I understand that you're not going to get 5 guys who are going to be multi-million-dollar contracts, multi-year deals as well. But when you're trying to do the whole thing sort of like, Riley Reef was good, and so that's a problem.
It is. And the point that Chancy brings up about how you allocate your resources, offensive line versus defense. The Vikings last spring during free agency and leading up to the draft, the Vikings said, all right, quarterback makes this large percentage of money. How are we going to use the rest of the money to best mold the roster? And they made a decision to use a lot of that money on defensive players, bringing back Anthony Barr, bringing back Everson Griffin. And we had a million discussions about this, and I think you and I don't know if we even disagree. We just you were saying, well, you're bringing back aging players for a lot of money when you probably should be using that money on offensive linemen to help fortify a front for Kirk Cousins, who's not mobile. And I came at it from a standpoint of, well, Mike Zimmer is a defensive head coach. His vision is defense. He has been building this defensive collection of basically the same players for 5 years. And he wants to get and these guys are still in their prime. Everson Griffin's kind of at the back end of his prime, but he played pretty well this season. He wants his guys all together. They communicate well to take another shot or two at this thing. So he wants to re-sign those guys. And if that's the vision of your franchise and that's your coach and that's what he feels comfortable with, I think you go with it. And now that you take a step back and they just got beat by the San Francisco 49ers, what would have helped them more in some of these games, in some of these regular season games? A brick wall offensive line, if you had been building that from the get-go in free agency and in the draft the last couple of years.
Yep, exactly.
Or Anthony Barr.
Right.
What would have helped you more? So
the brick wall.
The answer is 10 months later, you were